what are the keys to actually building out a staff that actually works?
But I have found the key to staffing up a company is to be the kind of place that people really want to work. Have a culture within your company that honors people, respects people, listens to people, appreciates and understands their value according to their skills and the things that they've got to offer. Treat them well, and they're going to want to be there. Make them a member of the team, not just an employee. I don't even like that word, honestly.
Today, we are joined by the founder of Double O Inc., doubleoinc.com. He does commercial glazing for windows indoors and was most recently rated one of the 25 best small companies in America by Forbs. So, Michael Otis, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Mark. I'm doing well, man. Feeling great. I'm sitting in my home office, having a good time. So, yeah, just looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have you here today. You've got a great story. You've done a lot of really impressive things over your time here on Earth. And I'm excited to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship in general. So let me ask you this. I hear people often describe entrepreneurship as jumping out of a plane and building your parachute on the way down. Was it like that for you? Or did you start with entrepreneurship as a side hustle yourself?
I absolutely started as a side hustle. It's I don't know. To me, that's the excitement, is not really knowing what you're jumping into. And I remember the first time, my first company. I've started several, but my first company, I just remember going, "Wow, I think I just started a company. I'm not really sure. I don't know what that means." But definitely.
Let's go into that a little bit, because that's kind of how it's been like for me, right? I'm doing one thing and all of a sudden someone says, "Hey, Mark, can I pay you to do this?" I'm like, well, I wasn't really planning on doing that, but sure, let's do it. So walk me through that. What do you mean you just started a company on accident?
Well, not quite such a funny story. My dad had passed away unexpectedly at a pretty early age. And he had a little thing at his house that he did, fixing broken windows for neighbors, that sort of thing. And so for him, it was a part-time, and yet it was his only job. He had reached a stage in his life where that was sufficient. He didn't want to work too hard. So that's what he was doing. And when he passed away, he had these jobs to finish up, or my mom had these jobs then to finish up, I suppose. And I said, "Well, Mom, I'll finish those jobs up for you, and I'll charge a little bit for my time, and I'll give you the money for the glass that she already had sitting in the garage, and so I'll make a little bit of money. I'll give you some money. We'll get this glass out of the garage for you." And she thought that was great, and so I did that. And one day I ran out of glass, and then I picked up the phone and I called the supplier and I said, "Hey, could you send me some more glass?" And it was in that moment I realized, like, oh wow, I think I just started a company. Like, I sort of startled myself because I didn't know what that was. All I knew is I was trying to fix the neighbor's windows.
Well, I mean, I think that's really cool. That's really smart. It's really practical. I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to build something huge where it's just take the small opportunities that are right in front of us and keep kind of leaning in. So what happened? You received this glass, and did your business just explode overnight? Did you start hiring employees, or how did that naturally evolve, Michael?
Well, in the beginning, it took a little while, but not real long before we grew. My dad had done this for about 10 years, and he said, well, he always wished he could hire me to work with him, but he knew the area couldn't support two people doing that same task, and so that wasn't an option. And then I started back up again and kind of got the thing going. And my goal my first year was to do $30,000 in business. I had a full-time job, and then my boss invited me to work full-time in my own company. So that was my goal. If I could only do $30,000 the first year, and the first year I did 126, and the next year I doubled that, and the year after that I doubled it again. And so I did have several employees that I brought on fairly quickly.
That's incredible. And so, forgive me if I'm wrong, you're building this window company on the side. You still have your primary job, or is there a certain point where you're like, okay, this is successful enough, I can drop my primary job and go full time with the windows and doors?
Well, as I said, I said it kind of tongue in cheek, but I was working full time. I'd drive to where I was working, do my 8-hour shift. About 5 o'clock, head out to the other place, half-hour drive away, do work till 11 o'clock at night, drive home, get some sleep, do it again. And I suppose I must have been kind of worn out. But as I say, my boss at my first job gave me permission to work full time at the other job, basically let me go. And so then the next morning, all I did is get up and drove to the other place instead. worked out great. I didn't have to even think about unemployment or whatever. So I did do both for a few months and then just focused full time on the one because they were both
Yeah.
full time jobs
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the goal. I mean, as an entrepreneur, my goal is to have control of my destiny, right? I think a lot of people go into entrepreneurship with the goal of, well, I want to retire at age 30 and I want to sit on a beach drinking margaritas. But to me, that's not exactly how it manifests itself. I mean, right now, you mentioned to me just pre-interview that you've got your primary business, Double O Inc., but you have 4 side hustles. So I'm kind of curious, when you started this business, was your goal to retire at age 30 or was it to have control? What was your goal?
Well, a couple of stories are intermingling because that story about my dad passing away, that was a company I sold quite a number of years ago. And then for a couple of years, I worked for someone else.
Hmm.
And it just didn't feel right. They were a good company. They paid me well. Nothing wrong with them at all. It just didn't feel like who I was or how I was wired. And so I left that company and started Double O. And my intention originally when I started Double O actually was that it was going to be a little hobby shop to pay for my woodworking tools. But that didn't last very long. And in no time at all, in fact, in the first few months, I hired several people because it wasn't my first company, I knew a little more about how to get it going. So it began as kind of a side hustle also, and then in no time was a full-time position. And in fact, we were also on the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row because at that point I knew what it meant to start a company and get it going a little bit better. And currently, I have 3 other side hustles, so to speak, 3 other companies all in the real estate space. So a couple of real estate holding companies, and then one that's a property management company that we started this past year. My son and I are partners in that one. And so I still have, even now, I have a full time company with almost 50 employees and 3 other side hustles just because that's kind of fun.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like an addiction. Once you get started and you kind of start seeing something growing, it's just there's some very large sense of accomplishment that you get when you see something start to take off. So you mentioned that when you launched your second business here, the Double O Inc., and you're like, okay, I've had some experience. I kind of know how to get this thing going more quickly. What would be the top 3 takeaways? What would you say were the top 3 things that really helped you to explode this business as quickly as possible?
A number of things. As you mentioned, I did the thing that you described too. People would call me up and say, "Hey, could you do this for me? Could you do that for me?" And I'm like, "What? Sure, why not? Yeah, we can do
Right.
that. I know how to do that." And so we found ourselves doing many things. And in the beginning of a company, I think this is pretty typical. Is that the beginning of a company? It's kind of like you start out anything for a buck,
Hmm.
right? I have the capacity, the capabilities, so sure, I'll do that. After a time, success is often found in specializing. So it's important to make that shift away from super general to more specific if you can, because when you make that shift, I have found over the years running Double O that we began offering many services, many products. And every time we chose to drop a product or drop a service, our revenue increased and we grew more because the thing that we specialized in, we got better at, we did more of, we met the need for, and so it helped us to grow. And so today we have a very, very tight niche of what we actually are willing to do. Whereas years ago, we used to do just about anything that required something to be built.
So I'm just kind of curious. I'm going to lean into this a little bit more because this is really, really interesting to me. It's something that I kind of struggle with or suffer with because I get hit up to, hey, can you build my website? Hey, can you do my video? Hey, can you help me launch my podcast? Doing all these different things. Do you think it's better to start broad so that you can, again, at least generate some revenue, start to build some name in the marketplace? Or do you think it's better to start ultra niche, ultra focused? What do you think about that, Mike?
I think it depends on your opportunity. So for me, I'm a bootstrapper kind of a guy, right? I started every company I have with somewhere close to zero. And so for me, it's like, well, man, and it was living off of those companies. So like I got to buy groceries that week, right? And so you do what you got to do to provide an income.
Yeah.
And so in that scenario, you start broad. But I think success is often found in specifying or getting super specific about what you're willing to do and tightening that up. And so if you have a lot of resources, you might say, well, maybe it's better to start out saying we are only this tight niche.
Yeah.
But when you don't have a lot of resources, you do what you got to do to pay the bills.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, you if there's no food on the table, you're not doing anything, right? So that
Right.
makes sense. So let's say that key one to having the successful explosion of your business is niching down as quickly as you can and being very specific. That's when you've seen a lot of growth. What would be the second thing that you'd recommend side hustlers and entrepreneurs to do to explode growth?
Well, hadn't thought of it quite like that, Mark. That's a tough question. What was it? It's hard to step back into those moments, but you've got to start taking advantage of every opportunity, every connection. One thing I would say is really important is don't be bashful. Sometimes I think we get a little bit hesitant to talk about the thing that we do, or we're a little bit shy about approaching a potential customer. Pick up the phone and just be bold and go for it.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at the reception that you will receive. Oftentimes, people that are bootstrapping or starting that side hustle, they have an identity crisis, I think. I think it's easy to feel like, oh no, I'm just that dude who's doing that little thing in my basement office in the corner. And so they don't respect their own ability, their own skill level. And that makes them hesitant. Step up and be bold. Be who you are. You're doing that thing because you're good at it, or you'd have been doing some other thing. You'd have been fixing windows like I was. And so don't devalue yourself.
Mm.
I think that's really important.
It's very easy, especially in the creative space, to get that imposter syndrome where you're like, well, who am I to be talking about this? Well, you're you, right? And if
Yeah.
if you don't believe in you, nobody else will. And I really like that idea of not being bashful, right? Because you miss out on 100% of the opportunities that you don't take, right?
And by the way, all space is creative space.
Okay, yeah,
That's the thing that took me a long time to figure out is like when I'm out working on someone's home or working on nowadays we don't do homes, but working on a commercial building or whatever, that's creativity too. It's how do we creatively solve these problems? And that really is entrepreneurship in a nutshell. How do you creatively solve a problem? And then when you do that, it justifies getting paid for what you've done. So I think that's really important too. Is it sometimes I spent years telling myself I'm not artistic at all. I'm just that's not my thing. I'm not artistic. I just build things. They got to be square, plumb, and level, or I don't understand how to do it right because I'm not artistic. And what I meant in my mind was, well, I couldn't paint a painting, I couldn't carve a carving. But on the other hand, I think even entrepreneurship is very artistic. It's a creativity because it's creatively looking at the world and saying, hey, here's a need. And this need is a problem, and I can solve that problem. And here's how I can do it. And when I do that, I can solve the world's problems and get paid for doing it, make some money.
that's what I love about entrepreneurs is we solve problems. Well, a lot of people sit on the side and complain about the problems. We get into them and like you said, look for creative and innovative ways to solve those problems. And I think as soon as you can solve that, get into that vacuum, fill that void like you did with the windows and the reno, you can really grow quickly. Of course, we're talking to Michael Otis here from Double O Inc. double-o-inc.com. We got a link below. So we've talked about some of the key core concepts. The other one that I don't think we've touched on is your staffing and the people that are around you. So I'm kind of curious. You build out a great staff. What are the keys to actually building out a staff that actually works? Because staffing is incredibly challenging. I found finding the right people with the right motivation and fit your vision of your company. How do you handle staffing? How do you find the right people, Michael?
I was talking to the owner of another company in our industry recently, and he shared this story. A friend of his had said, "Hey, are you still looking for good people?" He said, "Oh no, no." He said, "I quit looking for good people probably a year ago. Now I'm just looking for people."
Mm.
But, which is kind of an unfortunate reality. The fact is, it's really hard to find good quality, skilled people these days. Because honestly, the best people are always working already, right?
Yeah.
But I have found the key to staffing up a company is to be the kind of place that people really want to work. And so it's funny, our company does commercial glass and glazing, all the windows and doors you see on a commercial building. And yet, the purpose of our company is never stated like we want to be the place that sells the most glass or glazing or whatever. That isn't our purpose. Our purpose is to grow a company where people love to work.
Mm.
So have a culture within your company that honors people, respects people, listens to people, appreciates and understands their value according to their skills and the things that they've got to offer treat them well, and they're going to want to be there. Make them a member of the team, not just an employee. I don't even like that word, honestly.
Right.
But
I choose to go with team member for the people on
yeah,
my team because that's in essence that's what you are. You're a team. You scratch each other's backs to make sure that the wheels keep turning on the bus. Another thing that you've done that I think is interesting, I want to kind of ask you about this is one of your goals is to be 100% employee stock owned by 2027. When did that come about, and what was the motivation there?
it's been a dream I've had for a long time. I remember first reading about this thing we call an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan, long ago, and thinking, wow, I would love to do that because I have a team of people who built a company, right? We as entrepreneurs sometimes are guilty of saying, I built this company. I didn't build this company. The whole team of people built this company. Sure, I was the guy that got it going and all of that, but it isn't just about me. I've got this amazing team of people. Right now, as I said, I'm sitting in my home office. I'm home. They're all down there at the office. They're working. How can I take credit for building this company when they're literally day to day in the throes of the thing? So I think that's really important. And so an ESOP is all about the fact that look, if everybody else helped build it, why do I get all of the all of the benefit? Why can't I share the benefit with them? And someday, not too many years from now, as you can tell by looking at me, I'm going to need to retire, right? I'm going to have that moment where I'm like, at least retire from that business and focus on the other ones. And that's just smart. That's just healthy transition. And so someday I'm going to need to figure out that succession plan. And so our objective has been to pass ownership of the company onto the people that help build it so that they too can get the reward from having been involved in helping to build this company for years instead of just me. I just think that's an appropriate thing to do. And I think it honors them, their gift that they've given in time and their
When
skills and so on.
I think this is kind of more just kind of expand on your previous statement about getting the right people in place, keeping them motivated. If I know I'm building something that I'm an owner of, I'm going to be much more, I feel like I'd be much more motivated, right? So you've got that kind of that intrinsic entrepreneurial um, aspect to the employee experience. I think so. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's not something a lot of companies do right now.
Mhm.
Not a lot of
Mhm.
companies do that. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why you're rated by Forbes as one of the 25 best small companies in America. Maybe I don't know. Maybe. Uh, so I want to
Well,
talk a
that's
little bit
something to
more.
do with it.
I think that it does. I think Michael struck gold here. So it's something that everyone can kind of think about and take to the bank as you're growing out your small business. Find ways to get your team and get your employees and get your family involved. So I want to kind of segue a little bit to family because this is something that I think about a lot. I've got two small kids. I got a 4-year-old, 1-year-old, a wife. My goal is not to be a billionaire, but it's to be able to spend those quality moments with my family. And as an entrepreneur, one of my biggest fears is creating my own prison, right? Where I'm just, I create
Yep.
it to have freedom, but I end up just being a slave to this business that I built. How did you weigh that out? Because I know you're a family man, you've got a number of children. How do you balance out building a business while also spending that quality time with your family at the same time?
Yeah, my wife and I have 8 kids. And so, yes, we do have a number.
You got a head start
And
on me.
here's the irony of it. Double O was a nickname for our family because we got married 25 years ago or 24 years ago, and we blended my 4 kids and her 4 kids together into one family.
Mm,
And when that happened, I realized, well, I'm going to have to work like a lot of hours to provide for this crazy gang. And and is there a way that I could work with them instead of away from them? And so I started Double O as a way to teach my kids some skills, a trade, a work ethic, and to be able to work with them and spend time with them instead of just spending time away from them at work. A lot of entrepreneurs can get in that trap. I mean, you described it well, building a prison for ourselves. We do
yeah.
that. And so my objective was kind of like maybe if I was going to be in that prison, they were all going to be in it with me. I don't know. But not to say that all the kids work for me. In fact, they don't. We currently have just a couple of the kids working in our primary company, but I do have other connections in business with other of my kids. So that's been one way we've been able to do it is make the business exist to serve the family, not the family exists to serve the business. And yet, the other potential risk there is nepotism can be a problem.
Right.
You can build a really unhealthy company if your kids are somehow untouchable because they're, after all, your kids. They share your last name or your last initial. We refer to our kids sometimes as, oh, that's one of the O's. But the nickname came about the fact that my four kids, of course, their last name is Otis. My wife's four kids, their last name is O'Brien, hence double O.
Right.
Um, and so, anyway, all of our kids that have worked at the company various times in and out have been in positions where they work under managers, and the managers are told, look, you treat them like anyone else. They don't get special pay, they don't get special benefits. The only thing special they got at all was an opportunity to be able to have a job if they wanted one, if they needed one, but they still had to earn that. And so if they weren't working, doing their job, I mean, there are two of my boys at different times I had to fire. Wasn't
Wow.
a lot of fun. But
So yeah, and I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit because, like you said, nepotism is a problem, right? And I think this happens in a lot of family businesses. Is grandpa or the father grind and they grind it out and they go through the problems and all the challenges and they get there and they build it, and then the child comes in and almost has that expectation of, well, I'm the new business owner, when they haven't really gone through the struggle. There's something to be said about going through the struggle, about suffering and enduring those hard nights and wondering where that next paycheck's going to come from.
there's a
But
lot to be said for that. Yes.
yeah,
Um,
and I think they feel untouchable. I know there's a lot of big entrepreneurs like, Gary Vee, Kevin O'Leary, for example. They're like, hey, look, you're not working for me. You're going to build your own thing. And that's it. How, how do you actually pull the trigger on letting a child go? I mean, I imagine that's got to be a very painful moment as a father.
It is. It wasn't ever any fun, but it was really important. And there are times where they just have to learn a lesson by working for someone else.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. Sometimes they need to step away. One of our kids actually left our company, 6 months ago, went to work for not really a direct competitor, but another company in our industry. He wasn't fired; he quit. And I think it's been good. It's been good for our relationship. It's been good for him. And it's really dangerous if their only work experience is working in a family company, it's not going to be healthy.
Mm,
So those same kids that we don't have any of our kids that have only ever worked just for us. They've all worked somewhere else. And so even the ones that work with us now have been other places. There's something special about being able to work with them, but it is potentially dangerous. And so it's really important that they do, escape the family thing. And none of them, by the way, are going to end up sitting in my seat as president of the company. That's part of the reason behind the ESOP is that we really feel like it's the healthiest thing to do, is to get them out, get them doing other things, and see the company move into other ownership. And as I say, hopefully ownership of all the employees.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's super. Being an entrepreneur, a leader, or a parent, I think all have a lot of similarities in that there's going to be certain points where you have to make really difficult decisions. And at the time, it might not feel right, but sometimes the best growth for a human being is going through those struggles. Um, yeah, tough, tough. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of respect for what you built there.
Yeah, it's true. The struggle is where we learn. It's where we grow.
Yeah.
Um, we do have a goal to be the largest glass and glazing company in West Michigan. It's a simple thing, but part of the reason isn't so that we can be the largest. It's so that we can be the kind of people that figured out how to be the largest. It's about our personal growth, not just about the company's growth. It isn't about profit. It isn't about I don't know. It certainly isn't about greed. It's about
Yeah.
personal growth and how can we figure out how to grow individually, step up into that role. Today our company is an $8.5 million a year company, but we expect that in 2021 it will be 10 million. And here's a funny thing, Mark. I have never been the president of a $10 million company in my life. I never have. So how do I become that in 2021? I have to grow. So I've been at this a long time, nearly 40 years now, and yet I have to continue to learn and grow too. And everyone in our company does the same. And so our managers, they're going to be managing larger groups of employees or a larger lump of money or payables and receivables, and they have to step up and grow in their career as well. That's part of the beauty of it, is because the human condition is about growth, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about growing and learning and developing and being more than we've been in the past. And that really comes down to challenging ourselves in these different ways.
Well, that's why I really preach side hustling, entrepreneurship. You don't have to build that parachute on the way down from the airplane, but when you start building something new and you start working in your after hours, you never know what that's going to manifest itself into, and the personal growth that you're going to experience from that is tremendous. And quite frankly, maybe you never end up owning your own business and going all in and quitting your day job, right? But we're going through a pretty tumultuous time here in 2020, 2025. Things are going to move very quickly. So one of my biggest fears for all the humans out there that are listening is you get too comfortable in what you're doing, and then a certain technology comes in, or a pandemic, for example, and makes your job obsolete, right? If all you
Right,
know is hospitality management and all the hotels are closed down, well, now what?
right.
Now what? So I want to talk a little bit about that here, Michael, before we get into the rapid fire section of the show. How is your company adapting to COVID? Has it been impacted deeply? Not so much. How are you adapting?
It's been impacted significantly for sure. It's been difficult. So in the beginning, we were shut down, well, for the most part, for a couple of months. Almost think shutdown might have been better, but instead, all of our overhead staff continued to stay on and work, except that they went home and worked from home. And so we spent money on computers. We sent them home with those, and figured out how to work remotely, and we use Microsoft Teams a lot and things like that, various tools, Zoom, whatever. So during that time, we continued to pay everyone. But our field staff, 2/3 of those did take a layoff. They asked for it. One of the things that was a win for me in COVID is 2/3 of our skilled labor came and said, "I don't know what's going on. I'm not comfortable with this. I'm nervous about the risk. Will you lay me off?" And so we did. 1/3 came to us and said, "I can't like not work. I can't just go and sit home and stare at the television. Like it will kill me. And and so please don't lay me off." And so we didn't. And it actually worked out really well. We had a couple of jobs that were deemed essential, a hospital job, a police post, whatever, some things that were deemed essential. We were able to still work on some things, but our sales revenue went in the tank, and our overhead costs stayed up. So that was a challenge. And then here's one of the bigger challenges, I think. After 2 months, the governor said, "Okay, we're going to open construction back up again. So we all can come back. All the jobs are opened again on the same day. Every job site that wanted us there that day, and almost every one of them held the same completion date." And the problem with that is they all wanted us to double our staff, our workforce, like overnight, which of course couldn't be done.
Yeah.
And they wanted, while the feds were still paying a crazy amount of unemployment to people who just paying them to stay home, um, it made it very difficult. So it strained our relationship in some situations with our customers, because we're a subcontractor. So we're working for a general contractor who has a deadline also to get a building built by a certain date. So I understand their situation. And some of them, we all sat down together, pulled together. Some of them were just plain mean about it. And so the consequences of this whole situation have been pretty painful for us. But even today, if somebody is around somebody, exposed to somebody, next thing you know, 6 people are off that week for testing. We had that happen a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But we're getting through it a step at a time. And I know that those businesses, those individuals who own businesses in restaurants, as you say, in hospitality, hotels, my heart goes out for them, because as bad as we may have it, we don't have it bad at all compared to what others have gone through.
Yeah. It's definitely a good perspective. It's challenging for everyone, but count your blessings while you've got them, because it is a tumultuous time, to say the least. So we're sitting here talking with Michael Otis from Double O Inc. Go to oinc.com to find out more about what Michael does. And Michael, let's get into the rapid fire here, if you're all ready and you're strapped in and locked and
Okay.
loaded. Michael, what is a must-have business item that everyone should have that costs less than $50?
I think a really good book. I think it's different for all of us, but one of them that's really helped me a lot in the last couple of years is the book Traction. So that's an excellent one. How does your company get traction?
Dig
That's
it.
been good.
Love it. Love it. Michael, what is a must-have subscription?
For me, my subscription, I don't know if this is really a subscription per se, my membership in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. Uh, that's been fantastic. I've got a team of people there that, when people don't understand us entrepreneurs, they really don't. We go to the typical family reunion and we hang out, and our family thinks we're nuts. Well, because we probably are. And we hang out with a lot of our friends from school or whatever, and they all think we're nuts. Well, we probably are. And then I go and I connect with the local chapter of my entrepreneurs organization. I walk in a room, and you know what? That's my tribe. Those people, they get me. They understand me, and I understand them. And that's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, it feels so good to hang out with these guys. And so that membership means a great deal to me.
I love that. Love that. Final question here. If you had a billboard message that could reach millions and millions of people, Michael, what would you put on your billboard?
I think something as simple as like, be nice to one another, respect one another.
I dig it. Michael said it. I agree with it. Michael, thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad you enjoyed this episode. I've got several other episodes right here for you. Smash one of these videos to make sure that you don't miss out on the tips, tools, and tactics of industry experts. Let's take that side hustle full time. Smash one of these links.